Right, huge welcome, Mary. Thank you ever so much for meeting me this morning. Unfortunately, you're not going to be around for the special webinar that we're running on the Tuesday for OT Week, which you know is all around prevention. The reason I was keen to get you along, Mary, is I know we've been chatting, and I know you've got a really exciting project that you're going to be doing in Wiltshire around prevention that is being inspired by Bath Out 2. So also at the webinar during OT Week, we're going to have the team that did Bath Out 2. And I know you've obviously been inspired by the work that the Royal College of OT did around adaptations without delay. So it seemed really fitting to get you along to talk about the project that you're doing in Wiltshire that is around prevention. So what I will do is I will leave the stage and I'll hand over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Rachel. It's really lovely to be with you here in OT Week. Happy OT Week to you all. And I hope you've got fabulous things planned. So as Rachel said, my name is Mary Harvey and I'm the Principal Occupational Therapist in Wiltshire Council. And I want to share with you some of the work that we're doing that's really in its early stages regarding adaptations without delay, and a preventative pilot that we've got planned to implement some of the work that we've seen nationally and locally that's influenced it. So hopefully I can move my slide on. Yes, I can. Hooray! I wanted to share with you what our current bathing process looks like in Wiltshire, and somebody would potentially come and call our advice and contact. That's the ANC thing at the top, to tell us that they've got a bathing issue, and they'd might be seen straight away, they might not be, they might be on a waiting list, and they'd be assessed by the occupational therapist, and they'd go around this circle to be offered a type of bathing equipment to meet their need where they were at. It would be reviewed and the case would be closed. And we found that was what was happening for people several times in a row. Potentially they were coming to see us, getting in touch, or somebody was referring on, say that they've got an issue to do with their bathing needs. And we'd go and see them several times over several years. And eventually, at some point, after going around this circle a few times, or maybe we'd resolve it straight away, but sometimes as their needs progress, we'd find that they need more complex equipment. So we go back and see them another time to offer them the next stage of bathing equipment. So they might have progressed from a bath board and a bath step to a swivel bather the next time we see them. And then perhaps they go around this circle another time, and we'd be thinking about an overbath shower. So we find that we're doing things in very incremental ways. And eventually, at some point, we'd assess them when we go back at maybe the third time, and find that equipment wasn't meeting the need, and we'd look at doing a disabled facilities grant referral, and then potentially permanently resolve the issue after that, so that the person's bathing needs were no longer they weren't coming back to us a few years later. And so we found that when we stopped and did this process review, which is where this all came from, we thought, this is crazy. People are going round and round and round in circles over several years, getting different levels of equipment. We're not meeting their needs straight away for the long term. We're looking quite short term, and this doesn't make any sense. We're getting lots of referrals coming in. Our waiting lists are being affected. How can we do things differently? And obviously, this is in the landscape of some other work that's been going on through research, but the challenges we found were that we're in quite short term in our approach to equipment for bathing needs, and our resources were really stretched, and we had long waiting lists, and we're potentially being inefficient by just meeting people's needs where they were at. Obviously, this has an environmental impact for people from us going out repeatedly. Our equipment service or our occupational therapy staff had a carbon footprint going and doing those visits. And actually, when we asked the people that we work with, they were quite frustrated that we weren't resolving their issue in a longer term way. And whilst initially we found that good practice in the past looked like meeting people's needs where they were at, the landscape across the UK was changing, and that the best practice were looking more towards long-term needs with bathing rather than meeting people at the initial point of presentation. And when we had some conversations with the occupational therapists at our front door service, advice and contact, they were saying that some days they would get 4 referrals for people coming back for the same thing to do with bathing. So they'd been referred and then they'd come back at the next year because the solution was no longer meeting the needs. So we had a really strong rationale for change. I know that you're going to have bath out presenters on the call today, so big shout out to you guys. Thank you for doing that research. And bath out 2 showed us really clear benefits of fast tracked adaptations, and them having improved physical and mental health benefits for people using services, and those mental health needs being sustained. Potential to reduce care needs for people, potential to improve carer well-being because people weren't needing to have so much input to support people to bathe if they're having a bathing adaptation, and that bathing adaptations were really cost effective. Pound for pound, adaptations were cheaper than sustained packages of care. Sorry, couldn't get those words out. So that was one of our rationales for change. Another thing that came along was, I'm sure you'll all have seen Royal College of OT's Adaptations Without Delays, which really supports early intervention and getting the right person at the right time to get involved. And so we were looking at how we, as a service, could take on board those recommendations. And then we also had some local data that supported a rationale for change. We had a freedom of information request that came in that was really useful to us as a service to show that adaptations might be a more cost-effective solution for people. So potentially we looked at, so this freedom of information request looked at 2,038 people who'd had an adaptation through a disabled facilities grant over the past 5 years, and it looked at the outcomes for them and what had happened. And this information showed us that of those 2,038 people, they were admitted on average to a care home 2.4 years later than the people who didn't have a disabled facilities grant. And when we drilled into that data and removed the average cost of care, for example, oh, my slides have disappeared. We found that there was a significant potential cost saving by providing adaptations. So those people who by delaying admission to a care home, it could potentially save around £42,000. That we need to do some more digging into that data, but initially that's really impressive that potentially in Wiltshire we could be saving money whilst helping people look at their long-term bathing needs and prevent them having that repeated cycle of going through our system to get those things needed, the equipment, and then look at potentially going to an adaptation sooner. So yeah, that was what we found. So this is our proposed pilot, which we're still in the process of developing. Rachel did ask me. I did say to Rachel, we're not there yet. We're still working on it. But looking at how things will work, we're going to invite people to come in with their bathing needs, get in touch with us. We'll look to temporarily address the need by providing a greater level of equipment from our front door, and using video tools to help people potentially use that and risk assess that and be a bit more proactive in the equipment that we offer and the way that we inform people. And so whilst they're waiting, and hopefully they'll get fast tracked straight in via their OT assessment to an adaptation for their bathing needs, we'll review it, and hopefully in the long term it'll be one and done for the people that are eligible rather than going around the loop multiple times. So that's where we're aiming. Where we're going at this is we're going to be piloting 12 cases in one of our locality areas, and comparing them with 12 other people from another area to assess the impact and evaluate whether we want to do this long term. We'd love to roll this out everywhere immediately, but because of the way that this will systemically affect adult social care in our service, we can't do that without looking at what else is going on, what the other impact is from this, and whether there are any unintentional issues that come up from it. So yeah, that's really where we're going. That's our pilot. We're starting at late autumn, and we're going to be following people through the process, which obviously will take months because adaptations take a while, and we'll be comparing those those two different groups of people to see how we get on in reality, and hopefully it will show that things have improved. We'll see. So I'm going to invite Rachel back in. That's what I had to say, Rachel. I felt like I mumbled quite a lot there, so I hope it made sense. Did it make sense?
Do you know what? It's so lovely because having been a principal OT, there's nothing worse when you get that email to say we've had an FOI coming. Can you get such and such data? But it's so positive to see how powerful that you responding to that FOI, and actually what you found in terms of some of the benefits that you've already gained in Wiltshire in terms of the DFG. So that it's just really kind of really powerful to see the difference that DFG has made in terms of prevention and preventing people going into kind of residential care. I think the other thing, because one of the things that we're looking at Foundation shortly is around that sustainability. And one of the tasks that I've been given is looking at the kind of environmental impact. And I think sometimes we forget that incremental approach is useful, has is a valid approach, but I think sometimes we don't think about actually the impact of the kind of the equipment that gets used probably does end up, some of it will end up in landfill. So again, we don't think about that wider environmental impact, I don't think, always in terms of that incremental approach.
And we had a case study. So when we were building the case for change, we went and found some real live examples. And we had a person who'd come into our service a year ago, had a very minor issue sorted in their bathroom and some ramping done at the front door. So they were going through the DFG process, but then that work was closed down, and 3 months later they came back in for because that bathing equipment hadn't resolved their need, and so they're going back through the DFG loop again for an adaptation in their bathroom now. But that could have all been done in one go for that person. So you've got that environmental impact, but you've also got that upheaval for the person of having builders in twice, surveyors in twice. And I think we don't really necessarily stop and think about how disrupting it is for people, really. And they just want to get on with their lives. We want them to get on with their lives.
So it's really positive to kind of hear about that, the learning that you're doing in Wiltshire from those cases that you've got. But it's also nice, I guess, obviously myself and Marnie Walker, who was the other OT that was involved with adaptations without delay alongside Arcot on Housing Lane. I think for us, it's always really positive when, because you work on a document like that, but to then hear it being used in the real world, as it were, in terms of supporting best practice, alongside you using that evidence base for Bath Out too. So it's just really, again, seeing that evidence you using that evidence in practice as well.
Well, I just feel we're in a really strong position now. I'm hoping Philip's on this call, but it's just such a fantastic piece of research that him and the team have done. And it gives us the evidence. I mean, I walked into a meeting with councillors and explained the rationale for change in light of this research. And they were like, well, it's a no-brainer. And without research, we don't have such a strong leg to stand on. I mean, before we had your lovely document, we had adaptations without delay, and we had made some changes to our service. But those two together really gave me strong armour to walk in and say, I want to really radically change how we do our whole service. And these are the positive impacts it will have for the people who use our services. And this is the potential impact on us as a service in terms of a budgetary requirement. And they just went, oh, okay then. And isn't it lovely to have that evidence? Because often we feel we don't have it. So thank you to Philip and the team. Thank you to anybody else who's on this call who's thinking about research. Get involved. We really need that evidence-based building. And that it just gave us the power. It gave me the power to say, let's try something differently and have everybody go, yeah, why not? It's a no-brainer.
So huge thank you for coming along this morning and spending your time. Hopefully we can get you along in perhaps 18 months time to see how the pilot has gone and the outcomes that you've been able to achieve. But just as a kind of final question, obviously it is OT week, it is around prevention. So as a principal occupational therapist, what does adaptations and prevention mean to you?
Oh, that's a lovely question. I could spend a long time on that. adaptations and prevention together for me are the opportunity to give people freedom within their own home to do the things that they want to do in the place that's most important to them. And if somebody's willing to have an adaptation, it can prevent them from needing so many services. It can mean that they are the expert in their own lives and the champion, and they're less dependent on people coming in, and they've got more freedom to choose and have that choice and control. So for me, it's really empowering working through adaptations in a preventative way. And yeah, I think it's what we want to be doing, and it just would be lovely if we can change the system around us to help us work that way more of the time.
Mary, I couldn't have put it better myself. A huge thank you again for coming along today and sharing the work that you're doing in Wiltshire. Take care.
Thank you. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.